Hey everybody, it's Matthew, and I wanted to spend just a few minutes, it'll be quick, to give you an update on the Code of Ethics changes that take effect on January 1st, 2022 that were ratified by the NAR Board of Directors in November of 2021. This will complete our series on the updates for upcoming contract changes and the update on our regulatory changes for Virginia. So we'll post all those videos for everybody so that you have all three of the updates available to you. The Code of Ethics changes that take effect on January 1st were actually fairly straightforward and very simple this year, so it'll just take a minute to go through them. We'll start with Standard Practice 1.8. Realtors acting as agent or brokers of buyers or tenants shall submit to buyers and tenants all offers and counteroffers until acceptance, but have no obligation to continue to show properties to their clients after an offer has been accepted unless otherwise agreed to in writing. Upon the written request of the listing broker who submits a counteroffer to the buyer's tenant or broker, the buyer's tenant or /tenant broker shall provide, as soon as practical, a written affirmation to the listing broker stating that the counteroffer has been submitted to the buyers and tenants, or a written notification that the buyer tenants have waived the obligation to have the counteroffer presented. Realtors acting as agents or buyers tenants shall recommend that buyer tenants obtain advice of legal counsel if there is a question as to whether pre-existing contract has been terminated. So that's 1.8. So this is a reminder that previously 1.8 was changed and said if you're a listing agent and you are given an offer and the buyer agent requests in writing for confirmation that you did present the offer to the seller, you must, in writing, confirm that you did present the offer. You don't have to enter negotiations, you don't have to breach any confidentiality, you don't have to answer another series of questions, but at a minimum, the Code of Ethics says if it's requested of you to know if the listing agent, presented to your seller the buyer's offer, you must respond in writing. What they've done in 1.8 is add the other side of that. If you're the buyer agent and the listing agent sends you a counteroffer over, they have the right to ask you, did you present the counteroffer? And then you have the right, and then you have the obligation, if it was requested in writing, to confirm in writing that you did in fact present counteroffers or any other documents delivered to the buyer or tenant in the transaction. So it's pretty straightforward. If requested, you have to confirm that you presented it. Now remember, this doesn't completely resolve the issue of people not presenting offers, although I don't think that's nearly as big of a deal as most agents think it is. For some agents, they think anytime that their offer wasn't accepted, it must not have been presented because I'm that good. We have no reason to believe that unless you have evidence of it. But what this does do is make the agent on either side, representing landlord, seller, or buyer tenant, to confirm that they have in fact presented it. Remember, the law in the Code of Ethics requires us to speak truth, so you default to speaking truth unless you have sound evidence to the contrary. That's 1.8. 1.12 is a little bit in line with some of the Department of Justice issues we saw with NAR and some of the things they had already agreed to, and now they're slowly implementing this in the MLS rules and Code of Ethics. In Code of Ethics Standard Practice 12.1 says realtors must not represent that their brokerage services to a client or customer are free or available at no cost to their clients unless the realtor will receive no financial compensation from any source for these services. Now, there is an argument being made, and it's a fairly strong argument, that agents were routinely offering their services for free or at no cost, when in fact they do come at a cost. A prime example, and probably the most cited example of this, is buyer agents saying, why would you not work with a buyer agent? My services are free. They are not in fact free. The buyer is paying the seller, and the seller is generally paying the commission to the seller and the buyer. So they aren't free. Someone is compensating the buyer agent for their services eventually. Now, if you do in fact provide absolutely free services, you're going to take a listing on and you're charging no money to any party, not receiving any compensation at all, well, then you can advertise your services for free. If you're a buyer agent who is elected to waive all rights to commissions and you're going to work with those buyers for whatever reason, you have the right to market those services for free. Specifically, those markets those services are offerings that are free and not being compensated by any party at any time. So this will limit some of that advertising you see for agents saying my services are free when they truly aren't. That was the intent of this. Now, there was also some case studies. Now, I want to just really quickly touch base on this. Remember, case studies are used as guidelines for grievance and professional standards. If a complaint comes in They are situations in which NAR has vetted and said, this is a guideline to how to behave if a similar complaint comes in. But a fact pattern can always be different and unique. So these are not hard, fast rules. They're simply to share the spirit of the interpretation with grievance professional standards. And normally in my updates, I don't cover all of the standard of practices or case studies rather, because very often they don't really matter unless you're serving in those committees. But NAR actually adopted 4 pretty solid case studies for 10.5. And if you remember, a couple of Novembers ago, 10.5 was added because of, in the intent to limit hate speech and racial slurs and other things that were being used by realtors on social media, marketing, and in other statements. And that language in the code gave some people some pause. They're like, what does this mean? What can I say? What can't I say? And so I'm not going to read verbatim all these. I will tell you can find them all on the NAR website. I will add a link to this video on the YouTube channel so that you can go look at them yourself, but I will touch base on a few of them. One is, for example, the use of symbolism in your marketing that could be a violation of Article 10 as interpreted in 10.5. And they specifically give a situation in which a real estate listing agent used photos of a listing that had the Confederate flag in the photos. It was predominantly displayed in the photos. And in the case study, the panel found the agent in violation because the symbolism of the Confederate flag can be antagonistic against minorities. They also added some case studies about religious doctrine, whether you're simply saying, I believe my spiritual text or scriptural text says this about a certain people group, is in the case study, and you should read it, we'll say, okay, we don't think that's a violation to be in a Bible study or a religious scripture study and say, this is what I think the interpretation of this is. They give another case study where they go, but saying hateful things about these people group, especially in this case, it was a realtor who also is preaching, I believe. And he makes some statements about the people group that are otherwise protected, and that violated the code of ethics. And then a fourth that talked about, or actually there's 2 more. One that talks about the use of negative comments about political groups. Like, I think people who vote this way are not smart, for example. And the code of ethics manual, the case interpretation says, yeah, that's not really a violation because your political affiliation isn't a protected class. But then they do make statements about, you make a public statement on, for example, social media, chastising a women's march. And I think that the interpretation was using, again, I think it was a women's march on there. And they said that if making negative statements about women, so they are protected class, may violate Article 10 of the Code of Ethics. So it's really important you go read the nuances of those and take a look at them, because again, these are guidelines. These are not hard, fast rules. These are guidelines that show you the spirit and the interpretation potential of Article 10 and Standard of Practice 10.5. So that's it. There's a couple case studies you should go look at, and then 1.8 and then 12.1. Pretty big changes for some of the practices, but for most of us, those are things we were doing anyways. Of course, we were responding if you sent an offer over and letting you know we presented it. Of course, we weren't offering our services for free and devaluing ourselves. And generally, most of us are not intentionally posting listing photos that intend to harm or offend people. So a couple options there for you to go look at so you have some good rules. And as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thanks so much for watching.